Namato Ratana Tayasa. May I pay homage to Triple Gem, the Buddha, Dhamma, and the Sangha. My respect goes to my parents and my teachers. Hello, good evening. So today is Monday, the 3rd of August, 2020. This is Chan Sujan from Varapunya Meditation Center in Aberdeen, Scotland. So this is an ongoing Facebook Dhamma talk, speaking or sharing and reflection on the different topics and sharing some of the insights. Hi everyone, hi David, Manish, Margaret, Karina, Gautam and everyone. So today is another, in a way, a little bit of a sad day. Because in Aberdeen again the coronavirus broke down what is called one of the pubs. 13 people were called for further investigation in the coronavirus. So I hope that this second wave will not be as it was the first wave. That will again lock down everything. And at the center again, today Ajahn Pira's birthday, so we had early morning and a lovely chanting and meditation and a good conversation and blessings, and also during the lunch time was a nice cake, and today basically Western food, pizza, for the birthday celebration. So today again I am going to focus on the same topic that I have started yesterday, and that is the Samma Sankappa, and which is the ongoing talk on the basis of a first discourse of the Buddha. And the first discourse of the Buddha again tomorrow will be a full moon day, and some countries like in Nepal and part of Sri Lanka and also Burma, Myanmar, are celebrating this day as the first discourse that the Buddha gave, that is tomorrow. Whereas there are again in Thailand and then Cambodia, Laos, and we have started this last month, the full moon day, which was the beginning of July. So this is again normally takes place about 4 years, always 1 month confusion due to this lunar month calendar. So that's why today some parts of the Buddhist, particularly Theravada countries, are celebrating it as the first, the day when the Buddha gave the first discourse, and others will simply celebrate it as the day, the completion of the first month in the Vassa, during the Vassa day. And in Nepal in particularly, during this first month of Vassa, the people will come to the temples and listen the talks, and if not coming to the temple, then traditionally people will travel to different pilgrimage sites around in Kathmandu, as a form of acquiring a merit by paying respect to the different pilgrimage sites in Nepal. And traditionally Newars, the inhabitants of Nepal or in Kathmandu, would avoid any killings during this time, or basically always will be thinking of good things, thinking of the merits and how to accumulate merits. And this is again a part of the Samma Sankappa, or the right thought. And as I have said yesterday, that once we have the right thought, then everything becomes right. But the very moment when we have a wrong thought or misguided thought, the very moment we will not be hesitate to commit any bad actions, whether it is through the body or whether it is through the speech. Yeah? And this is the main reason of so many conflicts and misunderstanding that we go through. And in this Samma Sankappa, or the right thought, I have also mentioned that there are 3 types of it. One is thought of renunciation, and thought of non-ill will, and the thought of non-harming. These are the 3 thoughts regarded in Buddhism as the right thought. And also I mentioned a little bit, or touched a little bit, about the renunciation. And renunciation here is basically renouncing the essential pleasure, which is the main root cause of so many other troubles. And the renunciation is not an easy job. We normally, as worldlings, we have attachment to the sensual pleasure, or greed towards the sensual pleasure. And giving away or giving up this sensual pleasure is not that easy. And this we can see from the day when the Buddha gave up his palace life. He was fully, living as a royal prince, and we believe that he had, 3 seasonal palaces to enjoy, and every day new entertainments, and full of all the material comforts. Basically, these days we are looking for material, pleasure. Oh, the Buddha had it when he was in a palace. But he realized the danger of this sensual pleasure, or this pleasure in this worldling. And with that, he wanted to give up the palace. And one of the suttas, Buddha went on and speaking with his father, telling that indulgence in the sensual pleasure is not the path to the happiness. We have to give up this sensual pleasure, and then he desired to renounce the home life. And his father denied, didn't give a permission. And as a result of that, he was stuck in the palace again. And again, when we look at when he was born, and when he was predicted that he would either be the emperor or to be the Buddha. And that time his father tried so hard to prevent him from having this thought of a renunciation. His father didn't want him to be a monk or ascetic to be the Buddha. As the king or the leader of this ruling party or ruling community, his father had a thought, the prince Siddhartha, to be the king. And obviously, this is obvious thought of the king, that whenever there is a prince, they always thought of their child be the king. And with that thought, he wanted to the king wanted to prevent from this Buddha or the prince Siddhartha to be the Buddha and renouncing the palace life, and yet despite of so much protection or so much prevention and not allowing him to go away from the palace, and yet when the time comes, it was the time that he had to leave. So it's like once you have planted an apple tree, and you're preventing it not to get the apple tree while the tree is still growing. The very moment when the condition becomes suitable, conducive, the fruit naturally comes. And that's same with the prince. When he was 29 years old, and he basically thought of this renunciation, and it was not able to prevent or stopped by his father. His mind was already renounced this worldly life or worldly entertainment. And at the end of the day, when he was 29, at the day when he had a son, Rahula, on the night he thought that this Rahula, his son, basically is going to bind him with this love and attachment to the child. So he denied to say even goodbye to his own child because of this attachment and because of this belonging and the tie between the father and the son had. So he wasn't ready to face, and he had a fear that he would not be able to detach from this newly born baby. So he didn't even look at it or say goodbye to his own child and left the palace. And that sort of essential pleasure, that how hard to give up and how hard to abandon this essential pleasure. That's why in a Nekkhamma, or the renunciation, Buddha said there are two types of the essential pleasure that one has to overcome. The first one is called the Vattukama, which means the sensuality, essential pleasure in the material things, and that is basically eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and a body, basically indulging in this worldly material gains. And for the householders, it is not easy not to have comfortable place to stay, or not to hear the good things. It's not easy to resist. Everyone wants to see the nice things. Everyone wants to hear nice things. Accumulation of more materials, and end of the day, again, all the materials that one has accumulated cannot take with him. And that is the Vattukama, or the material pleasure, or indulgence in the material gains that one has to overcome. And the second is called the Kilesa Kama, the sensuality through the defilement, which is more subtler. And as long as we haven't attained the noblehood, we won't be able. We haven't overcome this material sensual pleasure, and we haven't even given up or overcome this kilesa kama, or the sensual defilements. The very moment when one becomes the noble ones, and that time one has overcome these two sensual pleasures. And here, in order to overcome not overcome, let's say renunciation, the Buddha gave in different ways. That some people even never had a thought of a renunciation, but they have just indulged completely, regardless of this heedfulness. Basically being mad with this world and the thinking that life is eternity and never ending, and the whole world is out there for to serve himself or herself. And this way, what happens is, like, it doesn't give any benefit for themselves and as well as the others. It's a temporary happiness they will receive. And the Buddha gave the simile. It's like a sapwood, or a wood that you have seen in the bank of the ocean or in the beaches, which is still connected with the water. It just drift away from the water, but it's still very wet. You cannot use it at all. It's both basically indulgence in both physical and mental. Blindfolded. Buddha used it, blindfolded. And the second is that there are certain people, after seeing this danger of this sensual pleasure, or feeling of dispassion and feeling of not happy with the sensual pleasure, or not happy with the worldly life, that how terrible this worldly life and never satisfying, and it doesn't give great satisfaction. And having thought or having understood in that way, feeling bored of this worldly life, and there is a sense of wanting to become or let's say going to retreats, or going to stay in a monastic life, or going away for holidays, like that. And that is again physically they have abandoned the sensual pleasures or the material gains or material entertainments. And there are plenty of examples, like monks. There are people become a monk for temporarily, and they sometimes physically they looks like a monks, but mentally they are still engaged with this material gain and material entertainment, engage with the material expansions. And particularly I have seen in India and even in Thailand as well, that the monks are expanding their empire through the wealth, like that. And there are again examples of even our members sometimes want to stay in a monastery. Basically they feel fed up with this worldly life and want to have the retreats. So basically when they come to stay in a temple or a retreat center, physically they become abandoned or given up the sensual pleasure, and yet their mind is still hanging with this material gain, and there is still this greed, hatred and delusion hanging around. And this is, the Buddha used the simile as like the wood that is out of the water but is still wet inside. The outer shell is looks like a dried, but inside is still wet, and you cannot use it for any other purpose. And if you try to set a fire, it would not be able, it would be very, very hard to set the fire. And the third category of abandoning or seeing the danger in essential pleasure, and was like people having a responsibility but thought of giving away or renunciation mentally. And one of the classic example I can remember is the Lumpur Sot, or the venerable monk who was the pioneering teaching on the Dhammakaya meditation and Lumpur Wat Pak Nam, the monk who in Bangkok, and in where I was where I became the high monk, or took a higher ordination, and where I stayed for about 7 years studying in that temple. So the Lumpur, before he became physically becoming a monk, what happened was he was a businessman. He normally brings the rice from Suphanburi, the central Bangkok, to sell in Bangkok through the boats. And one day, when he was going back from Bangkok through the narrow canal, and then there were bandits around, and he had the thought of danger that when he's traveling around. So first thought was he will put the other servants at the front, so when the bandits comes, and he will be safe. But later he thought that it is not fair for them. They have families too, and then I am as a leader, I should be lead them. So he went up to the front and let the other fellow crew to the behind. At that time, then he thought, this life is so danger, and we always have to fight and always have to go through these danger again and again, and what is it for? It's all just for the material entertainment or material gain. And then he had a thought of a renunciation, and he told to himself, once I have accumulated sufficient fund that will be able to survive for my parents, then I will become monk. And I think around 3 or 4 years later, at the age of around, I think, 21, he became a monk. And he dedicated himself for the great studies, going walking so far for the studies, and then looking after again going through this searching for the a meditation teacher, and going through this investigation. And later on, one of the nights when he was meditating, he had this insight and felt of so great. And that's how the Dhammakaya meditation introduced by him. And ever since he became the meditation teacher, and he taught extensively. And when he was in Bangkok, when he went around begging for the food, and often he didn't get much apart from only one meal, only one bag of a rice, or sometimes only one fruit. So he made another resolution that once when he become a senior monk or have responsibilities and good merits, he will not he will create the dhanasala, or a big room where he can feed all the monks and residents around. And once he became the abbot of Wat Pak Nam, he basically opened up this dhanasala, and ever since, monks, about 500 monks living there, there is food for breakfast and lunch provided. So that's the example I can think of it at the moment, that he first gave up his homely life or household life by thinking of renouncing this world, having seen the danger in this world. And again, at this moment, Buddha even said that there is a possibility of householders to be enlightened at that time, up to even like a third stage of a noblehood. So this is plenty. I can see so many people, mentally think of renouncing, and some take it seriously, and others take it very, less serious. And the last one is like physically and mentally renouncing for this material or sensual pleasures. An ability to be, keep away from this material and pleasure, or abandoning any sensual pleasures. The simply ability to free himself and join the renunciate life. It's like a dry wood, which is far from the sea, far from the water, and already dried. It's ready to blossom at any time. It's like a lotus flower which is ready to blossom at any time. As soon as the sun rises, lotus flower just blossoms. And that wood also, which is far away from the ocean or the water, and dried, ready to lit, and you can use it for any other purposes too. So this is the benefit of a renunciation, having the thought of renouncing in a broad sense, in a detail, how this is beneficial for this having the right thought of renouncing, which will bring not only for the happiness of our own self in this life, but also happiness to many people, which decreases a lot of conflict, but full of compassion and kindness develops. And that also helps to the next lives to come until the attainment of a Nibbana. So I end here for tonight on this second day of the Samma Sankappa, the right thought, and we'll continue another two aspects of the right thoughts tomorrow and coming soon. With this, I end here, and in a few minutes time we will have chanting and guided meditation. You're most welcome to join with us. If not, then see you tomorrow. Until then, good night and see you shortly. Thank you, and may the Buddha Dhamma Sangha bless you.